All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining another Prog Report Top 5 podcast. Hope you've been enjoying all the programming and shows we've been trying to present. If you've checked out Prog Report Radio, that's on our Facebook page and website, also through the Live 365 app. And we've been trying to bring some unique perspectives in addition to all the interviews and things that we've done over the last few years. And it keeps getting better and better. We've got a really cool and surprising panel here discussing one of the more difficult subjects we're going to discuss probably that we ever do on these top fives, which we're approaching the Dream Theater top 5 songs. Typically we might do albums, but I think the reason why we decided to do songs here is albums pretty much is there's a consensus more or less what the top 3 or 4 would be among most Dream Theater fans, and I'm not sure that would make for too aggressive debate. So songs becomes a lot more difficult, and I'm going to go ahead and introduce the special guests we have here. First off is a former Sony music executive and Dream Theater superfan who goes back with the band a long way, and he'll get into a little bit of that. I'd like to introduce Kyle Graves.
What's up, guys? How you doing?
Thanks, Kyle, for being here. Kyle and I met over the last many years at various concerts and Neal Morse festival events and cruises and all that. And he actually contributed a couple of pictures to my book, that we just came out. If you haven't seen that, it's impossible to have missed it if you're on the Prog Report at this point. The Essential Modern Progressive Rock Albums book. And he gave a couple of pictures on the Dream Theater Images and Words album, which thank you for that. And so I'm really excited. We have an amazing, really special guest here who has a really close tie to some Dream Theater stuff here, Mr. Eric Gillette.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, man. I'm sure you have way better things to do than mess with two music nerds here, but thank you for doing it.
I actually don't, so is that sad?
I do want to point out that actually this coincidentally, there's minutes ago, really, that we're broadcasting or recording this show was the announcement of the Morse Fest 2018.
Oh, yeah.
That's coming out, which, I mean, we get to see Eric Gillette play drums live, finally. Which
Yes.
I'm just waiting for all the comments, like, what? Where's Mike?
I've seen some, and people, there are a few people out there that aren't aware what an incredible drummer you actually are. And I think they're going to be surprised. I mean, I've seen some videos. I haven't seen you play live, but I know you know your way around a drum kit for sure.
Well, I'll just make loud noises, but I'll do what I can.
Yeah. So basically, that's going to be a 2 nights in September 14th and 15th. First night is like a storytellers with Ted and Ted Leonard and Nick DiVirgilio joining Neal, and the second night is the premiere of the prog rock musical that Neal wrote, which I guess you're part of the backing band with that, and that's going to be, it's called Jesus Christ the Exorcist, so who knows what that's all about.
Yeah, it sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun. As Neal put it, the usual cast of thousands where, I envision it being as big a production as all the other Morse Fests, strings, horns, singers, you name it. So I think it's going to be fun, man. I'm looking forward to it. No,
that's going to be really cool and interesting. And for anybody that hasn't been to a Morse Fest, it's no matter what the albums that are played, no matter what happens there, it's a fun time, and it's two full days of just prog immersion like you've never experienced. So
yeah,
I recommend it.
It's not even necessarily about the music anymore. It's become such a great community thing that it's like a big family reunion every year. And of course, the music's unbelievable. But just the camaraderie and the fellowship and talking about really nerdy, obscure progressive bands with your buddies from all over the world is very cool.
Yeah, and we've all gotten to know everybody there, and everybody comes back year after year, and that is what makes it cool. Just like with any of these things, like the Cruise to the Edge, and if you go to these Marillion weekends or whatever it is, it's all about start meeting the same people over and over again, which is cool. It's been a nice thing. Anyway, let's get started here. We got a lot to cover. I want to first jump in with Kyle, Kyle, you know the band, because I saw some of the pictures when you were sending me pictures for the book to consider. I mean, you have pictures with Mike and John and everybody from way back. I mean, we're talking before Images and Words. So how do you know the band on that kind of level?
Well, so my history goes back, pretty far, maybe not as far as some, but certainly farther than others. Back in '89, I had a coworker, and we would always talk music, and we kind of knew each other's tastes. And he comes in one day and he slams a cassette tape on the counter, and he says, "I hated this, but you're going to love it." And it was When Dreams Day Unite. And he was absolutely right. I took that thing home, and it was like my horizons just exploded. I was a fan of Queensryche and Fates Warning and some of the progressive bands of the time, but there was something different about When Dream Day Unite, the musicality of it. Of course, the production is terrible. It's hard to listen to, which I understand a lot of people, don't like the record for that reason. But the songs were there, the songwriting, the chops, the lyrical content. It just blew me away. So I played that cassette nonstop for a year until it just snapped. And so somewhere around 91, I got my first CD player and went to look for it on CD. I couldn't find it anywhere. At the time, I was managing a record store. This was before I got my job with Sony. And I call a friend at the label at MCA Mechanic who put out the first record. And I said, "Hey, I'm looking for a copy of this on CD." And the guys were like, "Who? Oh, Dream Theater? Oh, yeah, we dropped them. Yeah, they're done." And nobody cared. And I thought, okay,
wow.
they're these one and done bands that they're just going to come and go and nobody's ever going to hear from them again. And so I thought, well, I opened up the cassette and there was an address for the band. So I literally wrote the band a fan letter. And, back in my day, kids, when we wrote letters, I sound like I'm 100, but I'm not that old. But, I wrote the band a letter, and it wasn't so much a nerdy fanboy, "I love you guys." It was just like, "Hey, I love the album. I'm looking for it on CD. Is there any way I can order it from you?" And a couple weeks go by, and I get a handwritten letter on Dream Theater stationery, letterhead. And it's the original Dream Theater logo, by the way, not the classic Images and Words logo that we've all come to know and love. And it was a handwritten letter from some guy named Mike Portnoy. And so basically it was like, "Hey, thanks for, being a fan, and good news. We've got a new singer. We've got a new deal with Atco Records, and we're going to have a new record coming out. But until then, here's a phone number of a record store in Long Island, New York that they definitely have the CD because I was Dream Theater's hometown." And he said, "If you call them, maybe they'll send you the CD." And, you have to, this was 91. This was way pre-internet, and there weren't even a lot of mail order companies back then.
Yeah.
So I give them my credit card, and they send me a CD, and I was a happy camper. So not to make this story too long, but fast forward another year, it's now 92. I'm talking to a friend at Atlantic Records. He's the head of the metal department for Atlantic. And he says, "Hey, let me tell you about this new band we've got coming out. It's their debut album, a band called Dream Theater." And I was like, whoa. First of all, they're not a new band, and it's not their debut album, but I'm your guy. I love that band. And I'm going to do everything I can at my record store to help promote it. And so for the first couple of months before Pull Me Under came out, I know a lot of people came on board when Pull Me Under came on MTV and radio. He was doing sales tracking. My friend at Atlantic was doing sales tracking with record stores all around the country. And he told me week in and week out, I was selling more copies of Images and Words than any store he was tracking with. So he got word back to Mike, and Mike was in his office one day, and he called me at my store just to say thanks. Mike gave me tickets and backstage passes to their show at the Bayou in Washington, D.C. in October of 92.
Wow.
And that was my first time meeting the guys. And it was just, they literally, nobody knew who they were at that point. It was just the five of them and me and my then girlfriend, my now wife, sitting backstage hanging out with them. And to his credit, Mike has remained a loyal friend, 26 years now. And what I think is really cool about him, we all know him as sort of the torchbearer for progressive music. Right up until the end of when he left Dream Theater, he was doing the set lists and he was doing all sorts of special content and things like that. Take it back 28 years actually, to the original record, and the guy's answering fan mail and handwriting letters out to people. I give him a lot of credit for being the flag bearer of Prog, of all things Prog. So there you go. There's a long long story for you.
No, that's awesome, man. And I think that, you know what I've always found out with these artists that have been around for a long time and have big fan bases and a lot of success is that stuff like that you don't always know they do. But those are the people that go the extra mile, that do the extra interviews with stations, that do the extra meet and greets, that reach out to fans. There's a reason why people stick around and are successful. I think it always comes from stuff like that.
Absolutely. He is a fan first, and he knows what it's like to love a band. So he has given the same thing back to every single band he's been in, you know.
Eric, was your first time getting to know Mike through the Neal Morse Band stuff or prior?
Personally?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. A small intro, which can kind of segue into the first pick if you want. But
yeah, go ahead. You can go first.
My first real introduction to Dream Theater was, well, actually my first introduction to Mike, which would also include John, was I went to a G3 show in Fort Worth, Texas I'll probably get the year wrong. And the funny thing is that Mike would know he would know what date it was. And I think we've even talked about it, but I can't remember. It was probably around, 99 or 2000, something like that. I'm probably a little off, but anyways, it was Satriani, Vai, and Petrucci, and Petrucci played first. And I was going to see, Satriani and Vai. At that point, I was pretty new to the whole Guitar Hero music kind of thing, and those guys were like at the top for me. And so I was going there. I didn't really know anything about who was the first player or group or whatever. And then all of a sudden he just came out. And there's John playing a 7-string. I think the first song was Jaws of Life, which is just this heavy 7-string riff. And I was just like, what is going on? And then Mike's back there on drums, hitting himself in the head and throwing sticks. And Dave LaRue was on bass. And
yeah,
it was just, my mind was just kind of like what Kyle said, his horizons were expanded. Mine were like musically expanded, and instantly went home and got on the internet and was like, just Googling. The only real name I knew or remembered was Petrucci, because it was like on my ticket. So I went home and looked it up and found out that he was in this band Dream Theater. And at that time, I guess one of the first things to come up was, it's not really the first song I heard, but it's from the same album. But I ended up hearing a couple songs, and one of which was Fatal Tragedy, which is actually my number 5 pick.
All right.
I don't know. It's just what a thing to be introduced to a band that way, but also like the first thing I heard was from this, giant concept album that's, not your normal listening experience, especially for someone like me that I didn't really have a ton of knowledge of what a concept album was or anything like that. I was really into Metallica and just more on just the heavy side. And when I heard that song, I was just like blown away. It had all these elements that I loved, but hadn't really heard in music before. I played keyboards, I played guitar, and these were all like kind of just mashed together in this song and that whole album actually. But yeah, the whole middle section with the solos, and at this point, this really got me heavy into the band, and I was like started buying Mike's drum DVDs and all this stuff, and because I played drums too and all that at the time. And yeah, the middle section with like the drum nerds will know that it's Mike calls it the shrink and grow, how like the rhythms are shrinking.
I was gonna mention that part. Yeah, I know what you're going. You're going to.
Yeah, man. I was super. That from then on, I was, a big fan, and the guitar and keys harmony at the end of that, and I don't know, that was just really a kind of an aha moment musically for me when I dove in and started figuring out all this crazy music they had, and I wanted to know more about it. But yeah, there you go.
glad you picked that one because that was borderline on my list, and it ended up not making my top 5, but it was going to. And so, but two things I remember of that. One is that middle part you're talking about in the song. I remember that was a lesson for me because I always, at that time, I'd been a fan for years, but I didn't really understand some of the math behind how they come up with some of this stuff. And in that DVD, that he actually explained it.
Oh yeah,
which was really cool. And I remember that we play 2 of this, then 3 of this, and then we play 3 of that, and 4 of this, and they have it all mapped out. It's really cool to know. And so even now, when I listen to that song, I know how that goes to this day based on that.
And it's funny the way he can explain it to, you don't have to be a hardcore musician. I think I remember even my mom being around while I would watch that DVD over and over again. And I think by the 10th time I've watched it, I think she understood it too. So it's pretty cool.
The other thing is I was with a record label at the time around then. And I was part of, Kyle, you'll know, WEA, Warner Electro Atlantic. I was working for them down in Miami, and we got the advances for the Scenes from Memory, and me and all my friends that I had at the time were all fans of that album. And that was one of the first times where we got the advances, and I called them all and I said, "You're all coming over tonight and we're having a listening party." And that was one of the first times I ever did that, and that was amazing because to getting to work at a record label was cool already, but when you got to, there were a few times where it was a band you really liked that was on the label that was putting stuff out. A lot of times it was pop and things you hated, and you were just working it. But then we happened to have Dream Theater, which was like insane. And I was the only person that anyone knew that liked or knew who the band was that worked at the label. So
and I was super jealous of your label because I definitely wanted Dream Theater.
Yeah, so that was like the score. It was the few times when you got that kind of stuff happening. So, Kyle, what's your number 5?
Number 5 for me, and kind of like the Neal Morse one last week. It's like those guys only had 9 albums to choose from. We got like over 100 songs to choose from here, so that makes it really difficult.
Yeah.
And my choice, as Nick said last week from South Africa, my choice will change by the end of this discussion probably, but. Number 5 for me is Endless Sacrifice from Train of Thought.
Wow, cool.
And there's several reasons I like the song. Number 1, it features very cool, and a lot of them. Petrucci does Zakk Wylde guitar pings. What's that called, Eric? What's the ping?
Like a pinch harmonic. Yeah, totally.
That thing. Yeah. Pinch harmonic. I knew that. No, I didn't. Anyway, that's just that great ping that he does throughout the whole thing. The song's super heavy, it's crunchy, but what I love about it is at its core, it's a love song to his wife, to John Petrucci's wife, Raina. And, it starts off mellow. You've got Jordan's, beautiful keys going on there, and then it just kicks in. The lyric is like, "Try to stay alive until I hear your voice. I'm going to lose my mind." It's like so intense. And then we go back into that beautiful melody again with the next verse. You got the extra crunchy, riffy breakdown right in the middle of the song. You got Jordan's little schizophrenic keyboard thing where it's like the that back and forth thing. Just killer stuff. And then at the conclusion, there's just this great resolution where, John's singing to his wife saying, "Striving for balance, we rise to the challenge of staying connected in spite of circumstance." And I just love the idea that you have a super heavy, crunchy song, and it's really just saying, "I love you, babe." It's kind of cool.
That is awesome. Very, very cool. I'm gonna, I want to talk about Train of Thought for a second. I love that album. I know a lot of people were upset that they went like super kind of insane Pantera heavy for an album, but at the time
I was upset about that.
At the time I was into Pantera, and so I thought, hey, this is cool. And I liked that they kept going in that direction a little bit more rather than the opposite, which I'm sure the label was always wanting them to do, is go more and more commercial. And they just, with every album, kept going less and less commercial, which was really cool.
Try to stay alive until I hear your voice. I'm gonna lose my mind. Someone tell me why I chose this life. This superficial life, constant compromise, endless sacrifice. Moments
number 5. So I basically knew my top 4 sort of easy. 5 was down to about 5 songs that I couldn't figure out where to go. I'm going to give honorable mention to Octavarium and Change of Seasons and Scarred, which I'm going to say didn't end up making my list, but they were all going to be number 5. I ended up going with Erotomania, which I know Dance of Eternity's, I guess, the more complicated and appreciated instrumental, but this was just always my favorite instrumental, and I wanted to include an instrumental in my top 5. To me, it's as good as anything with vocals. It has a vocal melody on guitar for me. I think it's just memorable, perfectly written, and especially at the time, going back to 95, I guess, when this came out, I just hadn't heard anything like it. The only other guitar solo stuff I was listening to was really Satriani, and as much as I love him and still do, he wasn't writing stuff like this. And so, yeah, and I think I could probably sing it, like hum it, every guitar note and drum fill if you asked me to. I know it.
Let's hear it.
So, I know it so precisely. So yeah, that's my number 5.
Very cool. I like what you said there. Like there's a vocal melody line in there in the guitar, because I know exactly what you mean. I feel that way about Surfing with the Alien, Satriani. That was like the first record that I went, oh my gosh, you don't need vocals. Like you can sing these songs even though nobody's singing them.
Yeah. Cool. So let's see. Let's keep the order going. Eric, you're number 4.
Okay. Yeah. Like y'all have been saying, it's really hard to get stuff down to 5, but I put number 4 as The Great Debate. I just love the whole tone of this song. The way it kind of just sneaks in with the keyboard, and it slowly adds elements with the drums and then the bass. I don't know. I love everything about it. Obviously, it's in 7, so what's more prog than that? And I love it's about stem cell research, and it presents both sides without really taking one, which I think is cool. And then interesting, I mean, you guys probably know, but I really didn't know this, but they put all the left wing sound bites on the left speaker and all the right wing sound bites in the right.
I didn't know that, and that is awesome. That's really cool.
That sounds like that's a total Mike Portnoy thing. If it's not, I would be blown away that someone else had the idea. Yeah. But that's when I figured that out, I was like, that's something Mike would come up with, which is totally cool. And to find that out after listening to it for however many years is it's cool that you can find little nuggets like that. Even
awesome nerdy prog observation. That's awesome.
Yeah. I see. You can learn something.
Yeah. It just keeps on teaching. But I love how it's obviously influenced by Tool, and that's one of the things I love about this band is how many their influences are so broad. I mean, anything from Tool, Metallica, or to even lighter stuff like U2 or whatever. I just love that they infuse their music with so many different, and they're not afraid to do it, or even do it on the same album. On the same album that has something super heavy. So, yeah, when I heard the bass come in and all this, I was like, this is totally Tool. This is awesome. So, yeah, that song always stuck out to me. The solo sections are ridiculous, as always. But, yeah, I've always loved the whole vibe of that song. So
I always like the ending where Jordan's keyboard part comes in. It's like really towards the end. He has this really cool keyboard part before sort of the last minute. And yeah, I love that song. That song is awesome. That whole album's amazing.
That barely got inched out of my top 5.
Whoa. Yeah, I was wondering if we're going to have any overlap here. But
we might not because it's so diverse.
There's so many, yeah.
Humankind has reached a turning point. What's become
But that's why I didn't want to do albums, because no matter the order, it's going to be Images and Words, Scenes from Memory, 6 Degrees. It's just not going to vary much. And so I figured this would be a lot more challenging. Kyle, what do you got?
For me, number 4 is The Spirit Carries On from Scenes from a Memory.
Wow.
And I know a lot of people would choose Home or Finally Free. But for me, I love the Pink Floyd influence on it. Obviously, James's vocal delivery is very Floyd-esque. John Petrucci is playing very much. He's channeling his inner Gilmour there. And you got the female vocals at the end. It's just it's very Floyd-esque, but it's got that Dream Theater stamp on it, And it's always a crowd pleaser because we all sing along to it, don't we? Every one of us listening to this podcast right now, when you've seen Dream Theater play The Spirit Carries On, it's just one of those like you're in a beer garden in Germany with a beer stein in your arm. One of those great songs. But so that's what about the song itself. And then I'll tell you a real quick story here. What makes this song very special in my subjective opinion is the infamous fire marshal show that happened in LA on March 2nd of 2000. You guys familiar with that?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so there's been bootlegs flying around for years. So hard to believe it was 18 years ago now. But they come back out. So they've played a full set. It's awesome, amazing. They're just on fire. And they come back out and they start playing The Spirit Carries On. Well, the band gets to the point of vocals and James is nowhere to be found. So Mike just kind of starts casually singing into his mic and looking, everybody's looking on the sides of the stage. We found out afterwards that James, from what Portnoy told me, he was literally being detained by the fire marshal and the police, saying if he set foot on the stage, he was going to jail.
So, anyway, James is detained. The band is slowly being turned down. The audience is singing louder and louder. And it was just this great communal rock and roll moment that I'm sure none of us are ever going to forget. And the funny part, I had a little postscript at the end. We're all peacefully exiting the building, We're not happy about it, but we're leaving. And the LA police is there in full riot gear with shields and helmets on. I can only assume they thought we were like a Slayer audience and we were going to burn the city down. And, but we're Dream Theater fans. So we walk out, and I remember I turned to one of the riot police and I said, "We're not those kind of metalheads, dude. Relax." And that was it. But for me, it's kind of cemented that song in my mind for all time. So go out there and look for it. I think the bootleg that's out there is called Scenes from a Fire Marshal or something like that.
Oh,
so
that's perfect.
My number 4.
I did not know that story, and I'll check that out. That's awesome. All right, I'm still on my number 4. So I have a few weird choices. I think they're going to be weird choices, but it's just stuff that I like, and there's certain reasons behind some of these, like for you guys. When I first got out of college, I had been a Dream Theater fan, Images and Words and Awake and all that. And when I got out of college, I went directly to intern at a record label at Roie, which I eventually ended up working at. But right around that time, or shortly after, while I was there working in the mailroom, Dream Theater released Falling into Infinity. And, it's like going back to that. It was like, people don't remember, there wasn't Spotify, there wasn't access to music like this, like there is now. It was getting the advance to something like Falling into Infinity at that time was like the holy grail of being a music fan. Like, that was everything. I was like, yeah, I'm making no money working in the mailroom, but I got the new Dream Theater before everyone. I made it. I'm happy. So, and so then because of being with the label and stuff, when they came around town, I got to go to the show and meet the band. That was the first time I got to meet the band. It definitely was my favorite band at the time. So that while not, I guess it's not considered the best album, Falling into Infinity gets sort of a bad rap. My number 4 is Trial of Tears, which is one of like 3 epics that are on that album, which to me are worthy of everything they've ever done, and I still think that if their first album is Falling into Infinity, I think more people like it. It just wasn't what Images and Words in Awake was. But if considering the rock that was out at that time, no band was putting stuff like Trial of Tears and Lines in the Sand on an album. So at the very least, you had those songs if you were a prog metal fan. And Trial of Tears has always been one of my favorites. It has a killer chorus, just it's memorable. It's got some cool breakdowns. That's my number 4. And that was easy for me. I've always liked that song.
Yeah, there's a song from that album. I agree. I mean, that album is overlooked. It definitely has its moments. Hollow Years for me was an honorable mention. That I tried to squeeze that in the top 5, but I love that song. It's a simple kind of mellow ballad, but they had some great stuff on that record.
Yeah.
As I walk through all nightmares, rising and sinking like the waves, with my thoughts wrapped around me, through a trial of
All right, let's see. Back to Eric, number 3.
All right. Number 3, I have The Dance of Eternity. Seems like a kind of a obvious choice for a musician, but in my opinion, that's one of my favorite instrumental songs ever written and recorded. It's just completely crazy from beginning to end, and I love that all the time changes and. Going back to the drum DVD thing, I had, where he breaks down, he's like Mike's sitting in front of the console and he's just pointing at every time change as it goes by. And that was super cool. As someone who was into music, but at that time, odd time signatures weren't, I wouldn't say the thing I knew the most about. I mean, I knew maybe some really basic ones, but when that drum DVD made a lot of stuff make sense for me, and it even just generally in music, not just drumming. And I said that a lot growing up, and that's one thing I love about Mike is that he's a drummer, but he's a musician, and not every person is a well-rounded musician like that understands what's going on with all the other instruments and the technical side and the theory behind it and all that. Not that you need to know that, but it was super cool, and it opened the door even more for me for understanding this kind of music and how crazy it can be. But also, their other stuff it's not all that crazy, but that song was just one of my favorites, still is to this day. And so that's my number 3.
That song is insane and was close to my top 5, but I sort of figured you might have it. I want to just go, because you've one of the few people on earth to have the honor to actually play this song live with the Shattered Fortress that you did recently. In learning that song and playing it with Mike, did you learn it sort of by ear as a musician, like playing the music back and forth, or did you break down the parts like on the drum DVD, or how did Mike work that song out with you? How did you get to the final?
I love this question because usually people are kind of like, I don't know what the right word is, but like yeah, he sent the songs like and was like, here's the list. So, and that's honestly, that's how it is in every, you know, on all these groups I play in. If it's not something we wrote, if we're doing a cover or whatever, it's just like, here's the link to the file, you know. It's not, there's not a 12-page sheet music, you know, that you can read and automatically be able to play it, which for me, I prefer to learn by ear. And what I had working in my favor was how much I already knew about this song and this album because of the drum DVD and stuff like that. Because I wouldn't say the only hard part, because the whole song's very difficult, but one of the main things, in order to even think about playing the song, you got to really understand the timing of all those changes.
Yeah.
And for me to already have that song ingrained in my brain where, you know, I could air drum the thing, you know, because I just listened to it so much growing up. So that really worked in my favor. I can't imagine trying to learn it from scratch, maybe having only heard it a few times.
Right.
But it was definitely one of those things when we got the list of, you know, what songs he wanted to do, that was kind of one that I was like, ooh, like, I mean, but that's a great thing, I think, because it really pushes you as a musician. Whenever you get, you know, a song that you're sure in your heart that you could eventually play it, but at first you're kind of like, ugh, that always ends up being a good thing if you put in the time and work it out. But yeah, that's a song, and I played it on the cruise. Mike was awesome enough to come out and join me for a couple songs, but that's a song that once you learn it, like I will still use that kind of as a warm up. I say warm up. You have to be warm to play it, but once I'm warm, as an exercise, I mean, because it's so crazy and it's so much different stuff packed into like 4 minutes or 4.5. I don't really know. So It's not super long, but as a guitar player or even drummer, if you're playing it, it's one of those songs that it'll work you hard. So I still keep that fresh, and also I like to keep playing it because I put in all that time to learn it. I don't want to forget it.
Right.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Awesome.
Anyway,
let me just say, I flew down to Mexico City to rock out with my Brazilian and Mexican brothers down there.
And to eat tacos.
And eat tacos. We ate some awesome tacos. And I saw Dream Theater, I think, 53 times before Mike left the band, and I heard them play that song multiple times. You played it as good as I ever heard it, man. You guys were on fire, but particularly,
man, thank you.
I was standing right in front of you, and of course, trying to get you to smile or crack a smile never worked. You're in the zone, but
well, dude, you told me to make the rock faces, not smile. So.
Well, that's true.
Right.
That's
no,
true.
You can't smile while you're playing that song. That doesn't work.
Yeah.
Anyway, awesome choice.
Kyle, you're third.
Number 3 for me was is Learning to Live. And, you know, we got a rare lyrical appearance by the silent man himself. I really like these lyrics, and I know a lot of other Dream Theater fans over the years wondered why John Mayung didn't write more, because I just thought these are really interesting lyrics. They sounded different than anything Petrucci was doing, or Portnoy, or Kevin Moore, for that matter. And, you know, the song itself is very hopeful, which is something I see in a lot of Dream Theater music, except maybe like Honor Thy Father or something.
Yeah.
That was just mean and angry, you know.
I love that one. That was an honorable mention, by the way, for me.
There you go. So, you know, the way your heart sounds makes all the difference. It decides if you'll endure the pain that we all feel. And it makes all the difference in learning to live. Again, just very, very kind of hopeful, positive song. But even more than lyrically, I love the arrangement of that song. The way the music flows, the way it builds, the way that, like, Petrucci's like climbing a mountain, right? And he's scaling the top of this mountain. And just when you think he's at the top, there's like a false ending. And then he comes back in and he goes to the next highest mountain. You know? and you can hear his Alan Holdsworth influence in there, Al Di Meola influence. The guitar solo at the 8-minute 40 mark, if you guys pull that up.
Yeah.
From there to the end of that song, I think is some of Petrucci's finest recorded guitar playing. I mean, it just blows me away every single time.
Mm.
Yeah, love that song. I agree. One of the best, for sure.
When difference in learning to live. Here before me is my soul. I'm learning to live.
I'm up. Number 3 for me is Blind Faith from 6 Degrees. It was close to being number 1. I just think it's the most perfectly prog song. 6 Degrees is all sort of different styles. The Glass Prison is metal, and Great Debate is, kind of like Tool, and then they got like that opera thing on the second disc. And but Blind Faith to me was always just, that's their prog sound. That's the Images and Words, sort of middle of the road, and they just do it perfectly. Jordan Rudess's piano breakdown in the middle is insane, and I love John Mayung's bass line in the beginning. The whole thing, just one of my favorite songs. And I sort of liked that the chorus on it always was. It became aggressive, and it wasn't like a cheesy fist pumping chorus for some reason. I don't know. That always appealed to me in that song, because they could have gone, Innocence Faded or something on that chorus, that being that song, the type of song that it was, but they didn't. And I thought it really kept the song kind of grounded. So that's, I don't know if that's an obscure choice or not, but because I think a lot of other songs get more run from that album, but that's always been my favorite.
That's one of my favorites, and honestly, what I really wanted to do, if this was an album choice, that would be up there for me. That the whole double disc. And I was tempted to make the second disc a song, one of my top songs. Technically, I could.
Yeah.
But I didn't.
We always argue about that. I was asking Kyle about that, right? We talked about that, and I always felt like it's not one song. I know the band says it's one song, but I have a hard time considering it one song.
I get that, yeah, totally. Which is cool.
And the band is wrong. Let's just be
They don't know. What if they don't know? But I've always loved Blind Faith. It's such a great song. The solos and everything in that, it's amazing.
Sorry, you must excuse me. I painted my own Mona Lisa. She's fixed everything. Now I'm spoiled beyond my wildest dreams. Blind faith we have in you. West direction go we
I guess we're up to me. My number 2. I'm gonna have my number 2 as Home, and I swear I'm not picking all the songs I got to play in Shattered Fortress.
Yes, you are.
That just should show you how even more surreal that experience was for me to get to play I literally got to play like a lot of my favorite songs. So it was incredible. But yeah, Home was actually, when I was talking about it earlier, the G3 thing, and then hearing Dream Theater for the first time after that. This is actually the first song I ever heard, and I was just completely blown away. I mean, the first, the whole sitar thing in the beginning, and not really knowing if that's real or a keyboard, or even the keyboard solo. I remember I was letting my friend hear it, and he thought the keyboard solo was a guitar solo, right? And he thought it was some really weird pedal he was using or something. So it's all these weird little cool elements that I was trying to figure out, and it really is like the music I wanted to hear, but I didn't know I wanted to hear it yet, because like I said, at that time I was really into Metallica and just straight up heavy metal kind of stuff. But I don't know, it sounds weird to say, but yeah, it's like I wanted to hear that, but didn't know it really existed yet.
I know exactly what you mean. I mean, I was a Dream Theater fan long before I knew Spock's Beard, but when I first heard Spock's Beard, that's how I felt also. I've always wanted to hear this. I didn't know it existed.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Keep away from it.
That's so cool. I remember getting the first thing we heard when Scenes came out before was just a CD single that they passed around the label, and it had Home and I think an edit of one of the other songs or something. That's all we got sort of passed around, and it didn't say Metropolis 2. And I speaking with Mike on it was deliberately, they didn't say that the album was going to be called Metropolis 2 Scenes from a Memory until the very day the album came out. They didn't want anyone to know it was the sequel to Metropolis. So on all the promo things that went out to radio, everything, it only said Scenes from a Memory on it.
Wow.
Very cool.
Which is a cool little piece of trivia.
Yep.
Kyle, number 2.
Number 2 for me, I think probably would be a favorite of a lot of people. And you mentioned it earlier, Roy. Change of Seasons comes in at number 2. For me, this was a holy grail of a track back in the day amongst the early fans. We'd heard word, there was like rumor spreading of this epic 20-minute track that they'd been working on. And, remembering this is way pre-internet, right? I mean, when we first started hearing about it, the song was actually written in '89 and it was revised a bunch of times between then and when it came out in '95. But the only band that had done a 20-minute progressive metal song that I was aware of was Fate's Warning had done Ivory Gated Dreams. And, you had like Maiden dip their toe into the progressive pool with like Rime of the Ancient Mariner and Alexander the Great. But as far as a straight up prog metal band doing a 20-minute track, this was like, we were ravenous for it. We couldn't wait to hear the song. Excuse me. And so I was lucky enough to be at the very first live performance of that song. It was in March 4th of 93 in New York. And I was supposed to be like a 5-hour drive from where I lived in Virginia. But it took about 8 hours because I was in a blinding rainstorm. But I got there just in time. The band went on, and it was like this big sigh of relief. And then, obviously we all know the lyrics of A Change of Seasons are about Mike's mom tragically dying in a plane crash. And to this day, no kidding, to this day, when I listen to it, and the line comes up, she looked me in the eye, I said, I love you. And then there's that pause. And then it just says goodbye. Yeah. Gives me chills every time. Yeah. Every time. And I love how the lyrics are just so well written, using life, a metaphor of life and the change of the seasons as the earth rotates, just brilliant lyric writing, in my opinion. And so when I saw them perform it in 93, that was a full 2 years before it was officially released. And to this day, I'm a dad. Roy, I know you're a dad. My son is 11 years old, and every time I listen to it, I think of these lyrics. Seize the day I heard him say, "Life will not always be this way." I think of that lyric when I'm busy on Facebook or YouTube or just doing my thing, and my son actually wants my attention. I go, "Life will not always be this way." He's going to be off on his own soon and hanging out with his teenage friends and things like that. So I just get a lot of inspiration from A Change of Seasons. So that's number 2 for me.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I remember getting that when it came out, and I was, we're so used to now the 20, 30-minute epic. I feel like there's a new one by another band every day, but it's like you said, Kyle, that wasn't the case then.
Nope.
And it just was something like it was like a magic trick. Like, how did they do this? How do you write this?
Yep.
We had
fanzines back then, and basically word of mouth. There were no even the AOL chat rooms where you finally found other prog fans. That wasn't until like 95 or 96. So I mean, when this song was still being worked on, it was just people telling friends telling friends about it.
Yeah, I almost feel guilty not including it in my top 5. It really is. It's 5A or something. But I just it's not one I think the only reason why I didn't go with it is just I don't listen to it as much as some of the others. And that was sort of the deciding factor for me. But by a hair is right. The only way I could do it. But that's one of the best ever for sure. Okay, so my number 2. It'd be funny if your number one ends up being this choice because you said it's completely out of left field. I went with Count of Tuscany from Black Clouds and Silver Linings, and I don't know why it's my number two, but I love it so. It's a song I just love so much I can't explain it. It's perfect. The opening arpeggio thing is just amazing. Of course, the solos are nuts, but what I really like about it is the acoustic ending to the big build up at the end, which is just driving in my car, sort of arm waving like I'm at a show. I just think it's awesome. And it's the last song for Mike being in the band, which is sort of weird. It sort of feels like a conclusion. It has like sort of this big conclusion sort of sound to it. But that was I just thought by that point in their career, at least for me, I hadn't been happy with some of the albums leading up to Black Clouds. Again, I always preface it by saying everything they do is good, but
Right.
Systematic Chaos and Octavarium were sort of not my favorite albums, and I guess it was hard to live up to the stuff prior to that. And Black Clouds to me was such a sort of rejuvenation, and such a triumph. I think it's one of their best albums, and that's my favorite song from it, and it's still something I listen to all the time.
Now wait a minute, man. That's not how it is. You must be confused. That isn't who I am. Please don't be afraid. I would never try to hurt you. This is how we live. Strange although it seems. Please try to forgive. The chapel and the saint, the soldiers in the wine, the fables and the tales, all handed down through time. Of course you're free to go and tell the world my story. Tell about my brother, tell them about me, the Count of Tuscany.
I love that song. I kind of didn't pick it because I thought one of y'all would, so I'm
Okay,
kinda
cool.
glad.
All right, good.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, I think that's a surprising choice to me. For me, off that album, Shattered Fortress, and even The Best of Times. I mean, I love Mike's love letter to his dad. I think the lyrics are interestingly written there as well, just kind of recounting a life together. But Count of Tuscany is a great tune. It's not one that even made an honorable mention list for me, but still an awesome song. It's like, we talked about, it's like the same thing with Neal Morse. The worst of Neal Morse or the worst of Dream Theater is still better than anybody else,
Yeah. I mean, I could easily have put In the Presence of Enemies on my top 5 and been totally satisfied. Like,
Yep.
There's random songs all over the place that are, like, just tremendous. All right, are we down to the finals? All right, this is cool. All right, number 1, Eric, what do you got?
Oh, number 1, I have The Glass Prison. This one's always been one of my absolute favorites. I mean, I remember when I popped the first disc in, I was in my car, and you hear the static, and I'm like, what's going on? And then the bell, and then all of a sudden just wah, and then like all those drum hits, and it's just the fact that it's like an onslaught from the get-go once they come in, and like then, I mean, it's just one thing after the other. The guitar arpeggios come in, and the drumming is insane. It always is, but for this track, it has always been like some of my favorite recorded drumming from Mike, and it's just one of those that if I put it in or it comes on, I got to hear the whole thing and drum along to the whole thing. And I don't know, for me, it kind of has everything that I like of a prog song, but obviously more on the heavier side of prog songs. And this one just does it for me, man. And I think even my wife likes it. I mean, she had to hear it a few times when I was learning it, but it's just got, I don't know, it's something super catchy about it, that riff, and I don't know, just this one does it for me. So that's my number 1.
It's killer. I mean, I was again that was coming off right after Scenes from Memory, which is sort of all out prog, and then the first song on 6 Degrees was this, which was like, wow, they really took it up a notch. You're number one.
Number one for me is not just my favorite Dream Theater song. It's actually my favorite song of all time. And it is, I have, being in the music business for a long time, I have a CD collection of about 15,000. So to be number one, it's a very special song. I can pretty much guarantee it's not on anybody else's top 5 list or even top 50 list maybe. But it's from When Dream and Day Unite, It's Only a Matter of Time.
Yeah, for sure not. But yeah, cool.
Awesome.
That's funny.
Awesome. I like to not conform to the norm, even amongst progressive music, which doesn't conform to the norm. So the song starts out with Kevin Moore's keyboard sounding like a trumpet blast, announcing like a king's arrival or something. It kind of sets the tone for the song. But the song itself is all about that. It's about not conforming to kind of normal standards. Which to me is the very definition of prog. You know, when I really started to get heavily into progressive music, I went back as a late teenager and started digging into the Kansas catalog and, you know, stuff that came before me. And to hear this song, I think it ticks all the boxes. One of the things that I am kind of sad about, I lament quite often, is the fact that we have a very finite amount of lyrics from Kevin Moore, because I think he was a genius lyricist. And I love his choice of vocabulary. I love a very poetic way of putting things together. And so, you know, I hate to be so nerdy and break down lyrics, but doggone it, we're on a prog podcast. It's what we do, man. It's what we do. We break down nerdy lyrics. But the lyric in that song, it says, "A dream-stricken prince of a pauper's descent." I love the play on the prince and the pauper. And probably my favorite lyric of any Dream Theater song is, "I understand mine's a risky plan and your system can't miss, but is security after all a cause or symptom of happiness?" I think that's brilliant. It speaks to, even then, their ongoing battle with record companies trying to put them in a box and make Dream Theater more poppy and more radio friendly. You know, they wanted to do what they wanted to do. Yeah. And there was an original lyric I heard on one of the demos for Dream and Day. The original lyric for that line, I asked Portnoy for, because I couldn't pick it out. And he sent me an email once. It said, "Imperative counsel to obstinate minds searching for lifelong submission to dutiful crimes." Mike was like, I have no idea what he was talking about.
It sounds good.
Super nerdy. So he like dumbed down the super nerdy to just almost, you know, very nerdy. But so that's my number one, Only a Matter of Time, When Dream and Day Unite. I encourage anybody that's actually listening to this. I'm sure Dream and Day is probably at the bottom of most of your lists. If you don't go back and listen to the whole album, go back and listen to that one song, because the ending is so hopeful to me. It's the last line of the song is, "But if faith is the answer, we've already reached it, and if spirit's a sign, then it's only a matter of time." And it's all about like not giving up, not conforming, be who you want to be, you know, just go for it, which it's kind of a universal positive message. So
Cal, are you getting paid to push When Dream and Day Unite? It sounds like it.
I think he bought stock in Mechanic Records back in the day or something.
I wish I did, believe me. I'm telling you, that album means so much to me that, and nobody else, I never ever have a conversation where somebody goes, "Yeah, I love that record too." It's always like, no.
like the ShamWow guy with When Dream and Day Unite. But wait.
It just, you know what? It's a fine album. It's just always, it's different to me. It's not really Dream Theater as we know it. You know, it was sort of, they became what they were albums later. They sort of, for me anyway, that's how I always sort of looked at it. But,
well, they were young kids and they were wearing their influences on their sleeve. You could definitely hear the Rush, you could hear the Metallica, you know, and the production was terrible, which makes it hard to listen to, but it's got a special place for me.
I not a fair comparison, and maybe this isn't right, but I sort of feel like Haken's first album is that for me, where I like it and there's some really great stuff on it, but it sounds to me like they're trying to be Dream Theater more than what they became later, which is their own band completely. You know what I mean?
That makes, yep.
So, well, I'm the fortunate person of in my number one position of picking the only repeating song between our three lists, because my number one is "Learning to Live," which Kyle had at number 3. And you know, it's weird because for me, Images and Words was like life changing, and I write about that in the intro in my book. It sort of was the beginning of prog metal for me. That album, it just was like, oh, I didn't know you could make this kind of music. This is what I'm going to do, you know. And then every band I joined playing guitar and all that kind of stuff back then, our goal was to not repeat choruses, to not repeat parts at the risk of alienating anybody that wanted to come to a show. And you know, it was just based on the blueprint of Dream Theater. That's all it was, everything. I mean, and so picking one song from that album is hard. And while Metropolis maybe is more significant, sort of in a way, Learning to Live was just always my favorite song on the album. I think it's as perfect a song as the band has ever written. It's as perfect a song as you can write. And the ending, the whole harmonic thing, to close off the ending, I just thought was just so ingenious. You know, he's not doing a guitar solo. He's just playing harmonics the whole way out. And how cool is that? No one's ever done that. And with the woes, with the, you know, over that and all that, it's just too epic for words. So that's my choice. It was hard, but you know what? But I think between the three of us, I think we got all the good songs pretty much. I'm surprised Octavarium was not listed. That's the only one I thought might be on some lists, because I always see a lot of people saying that's like one of their best songs.
To me, that was definitely an honorable mention, because I had already had Change of Seasons in there, which was a long epic, so I didn't want to put that in. But I love Octavarium. Shattered Fortress, Scarred, Panic Attack, Constant Motion, This Dying Soul, Space Divest, all those were honorable mentions for me.
Yeah. What's one you struggled with leaving off, Eric?
Actually, I really like Scarred. What was the other one? 6 O'Clock, I just always loved the drumming in that. There was one other that almost made it. What was it? I'll think of it in a second. Yeah, those two for sure, though.
Yeah, the drum opening for 6 O'Clock alone is in the drum fill Hall of Fame, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. All right. Well, guys, I think
Honor Thy Father.
Oh yeah, you said that earlier. Honor Thy Father. Yeah. Cool. Well, guys, thank you so much for doing this. This was a lot of fun for me, and I think hopefully a lot of people will have learned something or enjoyed this. I think it was very cool, and to have somebody who's actually played with Mike and knows this stuff inside and out.
Yep.
Eric Gillette, thank you so much, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man, thank you. It's a blast.
Very cool.
Can I say 2 quick things?
Yeah, please.
number one, if anybody that's listening to this has not picked up Roy's book,
Oh,
pick it up. It's awesome. It's a beautiful book. It's very insightful. There's a lot of it's great pictures in there, but there's a lot of great insight to some awesome records that have kind of laid the foundation of prog over the last 25 years. So that's number one. Number
Thank you,
two,
man.
if you don't own both of Eric's solo releases, go buy them. Don't steal them. Don't download them. Don't file share them.
Absolutely.
Support the band because they're awesome.
Oh, man.
I've had the
Thanks.
Great Unknown in my CD player for a year, and over a year, and it's just awesome. So unless we support artists like him, independent artists that aren't going to make money otherwise, he's not going to be around to make another record and another record and another record. So go buy his music.
I
Good
second
man.
those
Thanks, Kyle.
words. Second those words for sure. It's an honor to know both of you and to be able to call on you for something like this, which was great. And I guess I will see you both at Morse Fest. If not, I don't imagine sooner, but I think that'll be when.
Nashville, here we come.
Yeah.
All right,
All right.
guys.
See you at the
take
Waffle
it
House.
easy. Yeah, thank you. All right, bye.
See you guys. Bye.
Bye.